everyone, welcome back. And the purpose of today's session is very special. Today's session is about transforming suffering and pain into growth and service. I am very excited for today's session, and I have a new guest today called Betty Withrow, all the way from the United States. And she is going to talk about how to transform pain, suffering, adversities into growth and service to others. Welcome.
Thank you, Krishiv. I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely. And you look great in that lilac dress.
Thank you.
So let's quickly begin the session for today. I would love to start with Betty. What helped you shift from suffering to using your experience for growth and service?
Ah, well, it's not a simple answer. There are several factors. One of them is that being in a state of suffering, at a certain point, you have to make a decision about how you're going to handle that. Are you going to stay that way, or are you going to do something about it? And for me, the answer is that you need to do something about it because, in my understanding of the nature of life, we are meant to grow and we're meant to experience faith that helps us to grow and to step away from identifying with whatever it is that's making us suffer. The Buddha has said that the attachment to events and to expectations is the root of all suffering. So I believe the first step is to not identify in the form of, well, this is happening to me. What you must do instead is say, there is something going on. There is a process, and I am part of that process, so that you're creating the possibility of looking at it in a different way and identifying in a creative way instead of some other way that causes you to continue to suffer. Now, how do you do that? Well, there's different ways. For me, the answer has always been my rebellion against the things that I see that are unjust and wrong in life, and experiences that I've had that I could, you know, I could have been destroyed by them, but instead I chose to push back by saying, I'm going to create beauty instead of that. That was my rebellion, like, against the negative influences. So that's been a key part of my process, is to say that I don't need to stay here. I believe that that's a decision that every person has to make about their experiences, as how are you going to interpret them as you're moving forward through life.
Adding on to that, just about last year, somebody told me you can either be a you can either be a victim of the circumstances or you can be a creator of what's coming up.
Right.
So the choice we make as an individual is being the victim of the past and maybe the present circumstances versus behaving in a manner how a creator would behave and look at the future with a completely different lens in order to be able to create that.
Yes, I believe the point of view that you take is what determines what your experience will be next. And each experience or each circumstance contains different elements that can be put together in an infinite number of ways. The problem is when people think that there's only one way for things to go, and that's when they are stuck. in their minds, and that is what causes them to be in a continual experience of suffering through what's happening for them.
What I have noticed is that in throughout the course of life, we are constantly creating new every single day. Like for example, today we both are creating something new. We are creating content. We are creating this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow we will create something else. It could be the same thing as yesterday, but we are always creating something. And I think part of that is what uh, it gives meaning to this word called karma, isn't
Right.
it? We are always creating something through feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and reactions and habits.
Yeah.
Because we are creating. Why?
Yeah.
Why do some people transform pain into strength, while others just remain stuck where they are for a long period of time?
Uh, I think that's fear. I think when people are in a state of fear, they cling to they cling to what they know. They know how to suffer. They know how to do that, and they know how to have a life that does not satisfy them. And so, even though they may know in their mind that things could be different and they could change, they may not be willing to pay the cost of moving from one condition to another, because the making that decision that you're going to live and approach your situation in a creative way means that you're taking responsibility for your situation on a new level. And much of the dominant culture teaches people that they should stay safe at all costs. And so, if the cost of staying safe is to actually be miserable, then for many people, that's a good trade off, because um, they don't have to step out into the unknown and examine questions that will arise when they go to take a more creative point of view. And I don't mean to say that this is something they decide on a conscious level. In a lot of cases, they're not deciding that on a conscious level. It's just habit. They have been trained through, possibly through their upbringing, but also through their experiences, that it's not safe to be creative, which is true. Creativity is not a safe road as safety is usually understood, unless you unless you realize that really there's nothing to lose. We're all safe. Everything's okay. But that's a big leap for a lot of people, and for most people. And so I think that that's one of the big reasons that people stay stuck. And also another reason is a different face of fear, which is thinking that they deserve it, because there's a lot of conditioning that goes around. Well, you don't deserve anything better than this. In fact, you don't deserve anything because you at core are bad, just from the get go. And it's very insidious. It's never spoken in that kind of language, but when you look at how people are encouraged to, for example, medicate away uncomfortable feelings or situations, or engage in behaviors that supposedly will make them feel better, and they do for about 5 minutes, and then it's like, okay, what else can I buy, or some form of addiction. You look at that, and all of that is reinforcing the message that there's something wrong with you. And the truth is, there is not something wrong with you. You are beautiful just as you are. You're a beloved piece of life and of creation, and you have much more ability and power than most of us are led to believe.
What is so? There are two things. One, the individual feels that he or she does not deserve, which is
Right.
basically low self-esteem. And the other thing that I took away from what you shared is that many people they they would rather be comfortable than take a risk towards what they really want, and
Yes.
that comfort becomes very addictive. So they're not able to leave something to attain something new.
Yes.
And this is something that I would say only 1 in 20 people will even take a risk. That's why we see so much
Mhm.
the divide. Most people go for nine to five jobs, and other people create those 9 to 5 jobs. There are less creators and more applications.
Right.
What role does writing or storytelling play in healing and self expression?
Okay. Well, I'm very passionate about writing and language. It's it's a great tool for all of us to use to take what's inside and allow it to move into the minds of others, which that's a key part of the healing process is to no longer identify with, particularly since we're talking about pain and how to overcome it. If you're talking uh, you have, say, for example, you have a painful experience and you would like to find a way to transform that to a different level, which I believe is the magic trick of life when you can take something that is painful for you personally and look at it in a different way and say, what can I offer the world based on what I've learned from this pain, and turn it around and offer it to the world. It does a couple of things. It it first of all, you're no longer personally identifying with that pain, which is a tremendous relief. It gets it out of your body and changes it on a spiritual level. And the second thing is that it allows other people to realize that they're okay, because they uh, they will say, "Oh, I can identify with that. I've had that feeling too." So, and when you make that connection completely between your mind and the minds of others, it's it's a beautiful thing. So, that's one answer. I could talk about writing all day, and
A
sometimes
lot
I
of people
do.
talk about this storytelling because
Uh-huh.
when you are offering a product or a service, you know, if you tell people what is your story, what is your why, then that makes them more keen to invest into your product or service rather than simply saying that we're just doing this because we know it makes
Yeah.
an amount of wealth. Then people will perceive it as, you're doing this for your own benefit, and chances are you're not going to give me the best service. But when there is a storytelling and there's a clear why statement attached, then it
Right.
always makes more sense. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience, for the youth, for people in their uh, mid age?
Well, I feel like what you just said about connection is the crux of the matter. Connecting with your audience and and particularly your market, as you were pointing out, through, I mean, there's, let's face it, there's a million people who can offer the same kind of thing that you are doing. Why would they choose you? When you tell them something that resonates from your heart particularly, then their mind can say, "Oh, okay, uh, I can believe in this person. I can understand the value of interacting with this person because it's more than a simple, as you pointed out, not just a profit oriented situation. It's an actual meeting of minds and coming together to resolve a concern of some kind. So the connection is the thing. It's all about connection.
So here's my final message for the audience. I hope you got a lot of value from today's session. And I'm going to leave you today with a question. Normally, I give a summary of the whole session, but today I'm going to give you a question. First, identify if you're a victim or a creator, and write down in the comments. And even if you are a victim, in our next session, we can talk about how to transform yourself from being a victim to a creator. Those are the two main categories. And if you're a creator, we would love to support your creation. Thank you very much.
Really, thank you. This has been fun.